My name is Michael Schwenger, and I've been a Burlington resident or working in Burlington for almost my whole life. Originally I was born in Hamilton, but we moved to Burlington when I was about 6 years old. Actually, I shouldn't say to Burlington because back then it was part of Flamborough, and I think it became Burlington around 1958 or 59, and we moved in 57. So back then Burlington was just a small little community, and it's amazing where it's come today. It's always been my hometown, there's no question about it. I've always been proud to say that I was born, or grew up in Burlington. Went to Aldershot High School and went to Glenview Public School and Aldershot, so it was a great community, and it's great to see how it's grown over the years. With any new city, people forget the roots and where it came from, and it's important that the community can go back and just see how Burlington started and how the head of the lake became so important. Because Joseph Brant wasn't always here. He came from New York State after the War of Independence, had to move to Canada, just like so many of our immigrants here. So you can almost tell the same story and tie the two together. The business I have is called the Stress Creek Group. When I took it over in 1976 from my father, I was general manager, and we make spun concrete poles, and back then we'd make any kind of shape or color of pole you want as long as it was round and gray. So like the old Henry Ford motto. But since then, how we grew it was we developed different shapes, different colors, and have really diversified our product line. And then we've also got into the lighting business as well, which helped us grow. And we now have 6 operating plants, 3 here in Canada and 3 in the United States. Well, it's growing like Burlington, I think, because Burlington started off, as I say, a small community. We were a small company, and right now it's got more people in it than Prince Edward Island, which is really quite amazing. And I think our company is growing just like Burlington, and it's thrived. Yeah, as I mentioned, we made any color of pole. It was usually like a standard gray and round, and we tried utility poles, sports lighting poles, flood lighting poles. But as the housing market got more and more complex, people were building fancier houses. They wanted fancier poles and fancier lights. And really, we had to grow with it, or else we would have lost a lot of market share. And we got into making polished poles with green stone, red stone, black stone, and then got into ornamental street lighting in 1986. My father had a business in construction, and he was in Hamilton, and his property got expropriated when they put Burlington Street in, so he decided he was going to move out to the suburbs, and we bought an old farm on Walker's Line in Burlington. I can tell you, it was out in the boonies. They were all farmland around us, and if you look at it today, you wouldn't believe how rural it was back then. Very lucky when I got out of business school to have an opportunity to move into Stress Creek, and it was something I've always wanted to do, and there were a lot of challenges, so I've always enjoyed it. Well, I started off as quality control as maybe a laborer, but when I took over, I'm a graduate from the University of Western Ontario School of Business with an honors BA, and when I graduated, I had an opportunity to take over Stress Creek, and I became general manager, you might say, on January 1st of 1976, and purchased the company from my father. And I believe it was around 1980-81. I'd have to go back and check the records, at which point I became president. And then eventually, when I had a very, very good, aggressive young manager, I said the only way I can keep him was to promote myself. So I promoted him to president, and I became chairman of the board. So at one time I was sitting in my office, and my dad came in and started giving me heck because he didn't like the plant manager we had. And I had to tell him, well, Dad, you hired me to run this business, let me run it. And he was a little bit taken back with that, I think. And but he did let me run the business, and I think he was quite proud that I stood up to him, and we never looked back. Well, family's the key. That's why I'm working. It's the betterment of my family, because I'm basically retired now. I don't come in and do the day-to-day, but the important thing is that it gives a living to both my family and to our employees, because that's what a business is all about. It's got to give back and keep people happy and thriving in life, and that we respect our employees as much as we respect our children, because as I mentioned, the employees are so critical to us, and they're all members of the community. And as I've always told my kids, even though we have one person that's working for them, he's a family usually of average of 4. So if we have 300 employees, that means we have 1,200 people that we're putting food in their mouths. So it's critical that we respect that. Well, I think one of the accomplishments was my children. I think when they grow up and become young adults, and my son has taken over the business, is doing a great job with that. He's actually started our 6th operating company called King Cast, where we make permanent die molded castings, and we use a lot of the product ourselves. But it still is always a risk when you do expand, and it's nice to see him focused on that. My daughter Lois, who is the second oldest, is running our foundation and has got into the house renovation business. So she's working on that with her husband. My other daughter is just going to hopefully be announcing today that she's going to have a baby. We got to wait the 3 months, and today is the 3 months, so fingers crossed. And my youngest son is at Mohawk College taking electrical engineering. Well, I've always tried to instill in my children to give back and to respect people, treat them the way you want to be treated. And I think that's critical that they do that and give back. I think they're going to be quite generous with that, my feeling is, because they understand my philosophy. Because what we do with our business is we give a certain percentage of our bottom line to the foundation. So we hope to grow that and be able to give more and more back to the community.